life. He's a pastor, a church planter, professional sound engineer. He's a media expert. He's a lecturer. He's a Christian radio pioneer, podcaster, professional content creator, and author. Conrad, it's great having you with us. You really do have your finger in a lot of pies of stuff that matters.
Okay, after this feels like eulogy, you know. I can't live in this guy's shadow.
So, I mean, tell me, how many radio stations have you started, online stations? It's more than 10.
It is 11.
So, yeah, there are a few things you can tell Conrad about when it comes to media and when it comes to reaching out into the world. And, I mean, you've lectured in so many places.
Yeah.
I mean, you've led... I mean, even Cambridge-based education you've led. So, I mean, there are a few things you haven't done in the area of assimilating information, creating information, pioneering thoughts, information on your own thoughts and ideas, and then getting it out there. I mean, this is something that you're passionate about.
It is. At the end of the day, we have a message. And to me, it's just so important to have people say meaningful things to people who care about that. So I'm passionate about education. It's meaningful content that we need to give people. It's life-changing. And at the end of the day, I think the thing I'm really passionate about is to allow people to discover their God-given passion and then give them something in their hand to achieve that. And at the end of the day, it is with what we communicate. So the technical part is really just a means to an end to get the message to the heart.
Yeah. Quickly, punt your podcast. And I'm not doing that to be funny, but it's great content that actually I feel like possibly has been either inspired by or part of your inspiration around your book.
Yes. My show is called Paper Plane Pilot.
Yeah.
There's a long story about that, but in any case, so it's called Paper Plane Pilot, and I believe like a flat piece of paper, if you just tweak it and fold it a little bit, it can do the extraordinary. It can actually fly.
Yes.
And we can be just a piece of paper that's eventually going to be crumbled up and end up in a dustbin somewhere or annoy people, or we can do something and add so much value and just become something incredible. And I think that was God's intention. So that's the idea behind the podcast.
Yeah, so it's all about potential. So let's go to the book. First of all, it feels very pertinent at this time where there's this almost vacuum in people's lives of hunger for good content. Because if I'm going online and let's say I'm grabbing a few moments to move through the likes of Instagram, for example, I'm going to find a lot of people talking about business and talking about whatever it is that they're talking about. And sometimes when I come across stuff that has a Christian feel to it, it does feel a bit wishy-washy. And I feel like this is possibly one of the things that might have piqued you to say, hang on a moment, we need something solid, more solid in where we share, whether it's online or anywhere else, that's not going to be so watered down, but that's actually going to edify the church and bring in the lost.
Okay, so two things. The book is not quite done yet.
Okay.
So a lot of research, and it is a training manual at this point in time. But what I believe happens, you made such a good point there, is I believe that we got to a place where the platforms started dictating to us what we are saying. And it is not the way it should be. The content should dictate the pattern and the form. And that led me to a place where I started digging into the Bible, not just from a dogmatic point of view where I read and I take the information from, let's say, a religious filter. What I said was, okay, let's look at this book as a combination of literature. Let's take a look at this as a historic piece, as a cultural commentary, and let's take all the trends. Because if it is true that the whole word was inspired by God, then I like to say, then we should find the divine between the lines. Yeah. Then there must be more to this. And I realized that Paul was never, if Paul had a ballpoint pen, he would not have been dictated to by that pen to tell him how he should write. And no, you only have so many words to put in a letter, because this is a letter, Paul. You have to play by the rules. People won't read it. It's too long. Shorten it down. Put a picture, emoji. Hello. You can't do that. Yeah. And he was driven by the calling of God and the message. And at the end of the day, I think this book is just a plea to the people. Let's get back to the calling that God has given us, and He's giving us tools to do that, to create meaningful content.
Well, what are some of those tools? Let us know how we can do that, because I think we're hungry not only to consume good content, but we can also be creators of good content for other people to consume.
You know, it's actually so simple. So the pattern that I found is that there are four main pillars on which the whole biblical content strategy stands. So first of all, you need to know, why am I doing this? What motivates you? And there is a biblical pattern. There's a calling. There's a worldview that we have that is different, and there is an opposing worldviews that we need to rectify in people's minds. And the next pillar is, so the first one is your motivation, your activator.
Yeah.
The next one is the people. You really know how you are talking to your people, who they are, what they are listening to, where they are listening, and understanding people and really knowing who your audience is and how you can better serve them. I mean, I will speak differently if I were to talk not to you now, but just to a group of 8-year-olds.
Yes.
I would have changed. Am I changing what I'm saying? No, it's just how I'm presenting it. And the next pillar is the way we produce and work with content, because the bottom line is we don't have time. And we need to be a lot more efficient with what we do. Right now, we are not just talking on radio. It's a moment in time and it's gone. Kay Pulpit decided to put this on a Facebook page and streaming this, recording this, putting in a podcast. So there's so much more happening from just a single conversation that can reach more people and expand the reach. And the last one is to measure. You'll be surprised to see how many times we find this principle in the Bible of measuring and assessing, and especially when it comes to content, where Jesus himself did this with technology, how Jesus himself worked with scientific knowledge, basically technology, to extend his reach and increase his efficiency. And I think this is a place where we need to take a step back and say, okay, let's get honest with each other before we release content or after we've done a bit of communication or teaching, and let's really assess, because what you measure, you can grow.
If we look at what we're currently doing when we talk about content, it's very easy to always think of the online space.
Yes.
We always think of social media and places where you can place content. Now, we also need to remind our listeners this isn't the only place where we can share content. There are other opportunities and other ways for us to get our message across.
That's right. Unfortunately, this term was hijacked. I want to use another term, but let's leave it. That's very loaded. So if I talk about you have a choice between coffee or tea, and I start talking about choice, the term choice has been taken and put into another space in another context, and now choice is talking about abortion. So if I say you have a choice between coffee and tea, I'm not talking about that issue. Okay, so this is very extreme. Just bear with me. Unfortunately, this happened with the term content as well. So if I say content, everybody's thinking it's pictures of on Instagram. And when I talk about Christian content, everybody thinks it's people. Why do we have so many pictures of coffee at church? I don't know. In any case, we shall know that you believe us by the coffee you drink in your barista. This is not content. It is literally what we teach, what we communicate, how we communicate, the books we write, the programs on radio, on television, on podcast. That's all part of content. And we have people listening, but they are listening in different places. And the trick is to really find where are the people listening, and how can I take this platform that I have to reach that audience and use it to the best of our knowledge.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing that we're making in the content that we're creating, whether we're online like we're talking about initially or anywhere else? What are some of the big mistakes that you're seeing that we could do better?
In a Christian context, we are branding and advertising way too much. It is, think about it, your newspaper. Nowadays we don't have newspapers, but you used to use a newspaper to go start the fire for the bride.
Yeah.
And you use that to maybe clean the windows afterwards, but it has no real value anymore. We take too much time and effort and human resource and skill to advertise something that is going to be online today, gone tomorrow forever. I think we can be more intentional by advertising our purpose and advertising Jesus Christ, advertising the value of the word, the benefits that it has to a lost and dying world, and to people who needs to live every day, all of us, that can find wisdom from God's word, from the Bible, and from a Christian worldview. And I think we should just tip the scale a bit to put more emphasis on the message, and in practical ways, not just dogmatically or big philosophical things. We need to make it very practical and have that in long form and short form content.
Yeah. Once the book goes to print, I know you and I were talking about it earlier on in the week, talking about, because, a lot of times printing costs money and publishing and all of these things, and then it's easier to go into the e-space and get things in PDF and the like. So when this eventually comes to print or available in the e-space, who would benefit from this book?
This is a difficult part because they always tell you to niche down and talk to one specific thing. I'm talking to Christian content creators, organizations, and to individuals. But where I'm not talking to one specific person alone is I'm talking to people who needs to manage content strategies, let's say on an international, national level, and then let's say in a congregation setup. I'm talking to your content curators and manufacturers and producers. I'm talking to the analytical people who has to manage this thing and pay for this. And I'm talking to your let's call it your human resource department, your training people who's into the audience, the people. So I'm really addressing 4 audiences. So which opens it up and makes it very interesting because you're speaking 4 different languages here.
Yeah.
And part of the one of the reasons why I've done it this way is to give vocabulary. I feel many organizations have problems because you have your visionary a leader who has to interface with a technical person. Your technical person does not speak HR or human resources, and to bridge those gaps so that there's a interface, some kind of a language interpretation between these departments. And that's really what I wanted to do is to streamline that flow, because I think that is one of the reasons why we see a lot of content strategies implode.
I'd love to talk about this as we close, Conrad, the name you chose for this work of yours. Interesting that you would bring rain and water into this scenario. Tell us more about that.
Okay, let's close with that one. Psalm 63 says, "My soul thirsts for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water." Can you imagine how horrible that might be? And you're not just thirsty, but you're in this dry and weary place and there's no access to water. And this is our job. We need to give somebody a bottle of water. That could be a WhatsApp. That could be a sermon. That could be a message. That could be a phone call. And we are doing this well. We can communicate the message that gives life. Wonderful. Now I'm not thirsty. I've given you a bottle of water, but I'm still dry in a dry and weary land. There's still no water. The moment churches come together, organizations, K Pulpit, for example, and many places decide, let's put a combined effort in. And we have regular church service. We have a book that's been published. We have a podcast. We have a constant stream of water. Suddenly, there's a pipe and a tap.
Yeah.
We're not thirsty anymore. We can't say there's no water. We have water, but it's still a dry and weary land. And this is where I'm at with the book. Imagine for a moment we can all forget about branding ourselves for a little bit and just put it low on the priority list and take all the effort that we take in advertising and branding and pictures of our coffee at church, and we start producing a bit more reliable, relatable, shareable content online that's promoting what we've been called to do, making disciples, God's word, the hope, the life that He's given us. And imagine it's just more and more people giving more and more messages away in the world.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're causing precipitation. and we make it rain.
Yeah.
And that's the title of the book. Let's make it rain.
We love that. That's the voice of Conrad de Vries. We know him if you're in the podcasting space, if you're in radio. He's a trainer, he's a church planter, he's a pastor, he's a professional sound engineer, and now author. What a pleasure to hang out with you, Conrad. Nice to connect with you again. Just remember the first time you and I ever worked together, Conrad, was I think for Crown Financial Ministries, I think was when I met you and we did some work
that's
together.
right.
That was like 15, 16, 17 years ago. Anyway, we've known each other for a while. It's really good to have you in the studio. Thanks for sharing. Can we keep an eye on you and your podcast? Please share that as well, because it's worth listening to for starters. And secondly, once this is out and we can get our hands on it, where can we get more information?
Okay, so you can watch me. Okay, my podcast is Paper Plane Pilot. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, or you can just go paperplanepilot.org. And Moo Moo Media. Yes, I did that. I also called my son Jedi. So Moo Moo Media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. I'll most probably make a bit of noise there about the book.
So you can find it all there. Thanks so much, Conrad. What a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate being here.